for me, oh, by the way, I have a new background. Um,
I love it.
I
What's
have
that, Rube?
this girl right here painted this for me when I left.
Oh,
Aw.
She painted this. This girl messaged me. She follows me on Instagram, and she created these pictures. And she messaged me. She watches the show. She watches. She goes, "Mr. Aguilar, what happened to the pictures I sent you of me? Can I see that on your background?" I go, "It's
Whoops.
done. It's happening."
How
that's
So,
cute.
um,
very cool.
anyway, yeah, it was helpful to hear that, and okay, I guess.
We're
Wow.
not complainers. We're teachers. We just do our job. But
Yeah.
sometimes you guys speak up for yourself.
Right,
Yes.
absolutely. And I wish I just mentioned that the best part of the job and what kept me there, what keeps us there, are the students. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today we have return guest Sonia Tovar. How are you, Sonia?
I'm good.
Good. Today we are talking about a book that we all love. Those are so good, huh, Jacob, when we all agree on something.
We sometimes don't agree, and I love it when you and I get along.
The last time we disagreed, one of us got very angry, and I'll just leave it to the audience to figure out which of the two got lost his cool. But we're not going to do that today, because today we agree. And we're talking about the 1997 book of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. This is, as you read this book, you get a little bit of the Narnia vibe, a little bit of Oliver Twist, and just the great myths and legends that you've read since you were a child. And before I turn it over to you, Sonia, I just want to say this. It is astonishing to see this writer's imagination. It feels like she hasn't forgotten what it's like to be a child. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
That is no small feat for an adult, right? And I guess on the one hand, as you read it, it feels like just a fairy tale from beginning to end. But I really appreciate the details, the letters from nowhere or from someone, something like that. The hat, right? The sorter's sorting hat, and the chess pieces that are alive. The details is what brings it all together and makes this an unforgettable novel. What hits you about this book, Sonia?
Well, at I look at the book from two angles. One, as a reader, I started reading the book in college, actually, when I was working on my credential. As when I found out about the book series. A few of the books had already come out, so then I caught up real fast, and then I was waiting for each book to come. But I loved it because, like you said, the imagination, the connection with common cultural folklore, and just amazingly intertwining all the stories you've heard into these new characters and plots. And then I also love the book as a teacher. And for many years, as an eighth grade teacher, I actually taught Harry Potter book one as a text. And it covers all the figurative language, the elements of literature, metaphors, similes, alliteration, personification, sensory details, puns. I mean, just on and on and on. You can teach all the literary elements through book one. And another area for teaching is the Latin roots, because a lot of the names of the characters and the names of spells are, you can figure out what they're for or what they mean based on knowledge of Latin roots, which is something you teach in English class. And then another thing that I taught was the idea of mentor texts, and how authors themselves obviously had mentor texts that they use, because like you said, when you're reading it, it makes you feel like you're reading C.S. Lewis or maybe even Tolkien a little bit, because of the way she intertwined folklore and stories into the plot. And then, you know, I would teach my students, okay, if you were going to write your own story or your own characters, you know, how could you use this style as a mentor text and so on. So there's just a lot of areas of vocabulary level, like things I never heard of, like the Knickerbockers, you know, like the Knicks are named after the Knickerbockers. Well, what are those? And so on and on, just so many ways to connect the students with things they need to learn, but in a very fun way.
Very useful as a teacher. Absolutely. And then I like how you mentioned vocabulary and figurative language, because a lot of maybe not veteran teachers, but some would think to teach figurative language and vocabulary independently. But no, you got to look at a book and make it fun. Make that system of knowledge fun for the student. And what's funner than Harry Potter? So, Jacob, yeah, right.
Can I just say one thing, Rube? I know you had a question for me, but I didn't read this book until my students were reading it, Sonia, and not just one kid was reading it. I remember this. Several. I was teaching middle school, and I think it's a perfect age for kids to read. You know, at middle school, in that middle school age. And I said, "What is this book everyone has?" And I started reading. I picked up a copy. I read it, and I go, "Oh, I get it. This got me in right from the first chapter when you're reading about this crazy family that treated this poor boy, like Ruben mentioned, like
the
an
Oliver
Oliver
Twist
character."
tale. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it got me. I was in, and it was so nice his last couple of weeks, Sonia, to read it again. This is the second time I read it, and I go, "Oh, this reminds me of that time period in my life where I was reading it, and it was just a great time." I'm sorry, Ruben, you had a question. Sorry.
No, you made a good point. The connection with this, this English thing where a kid is kind of abused, at least verbally abused,
Neglected.
Oh yeah, for sure.
neglected, and I was just thinking about the elements of fiction and how so many writers are trying to push forward their books and their ideas, but you have to not forget the power of Harry Potter himself. This comes through in the movie as well, and we mentioned the screenwriter of the first movie at least, but the character is very humble, and I think if this character was written in such a way where he was mouthy or he was arrogant a little bit more, maybe we don't believe it. We don't want to go on that journey. So I appreciated the character Harry Potter as well as the book, because we want to take that ride. And man, it's a great one. But what else is it about do you think, I mean, I have my ideas and I could share them, but why did the public grab onto this? And to the point where now there's rides. What is this book telling the public?
Can I say something first, and then Sonia, I know you probably have something to say, but I feel like this book is really about friendship too, and I think people want that type of friendship. Those three people were tight, and I don't think there's no Harry Potter without Hermione's. Am I saying right? And Ron,
Hermione.
Hermione's. I don't think there is a Harry Potter without them, because they bring elements to that friendship to what he does. They need each other. And I think people love that. I'm sorry. I think they do. I think that's why it was successful, is that people, if they don't have that kind of friendship, they want it. Or if they do have that, they go, wow, I could relate to that. I don't know, Sonia, I'm not sure if you feel the same way about that.
Yeah, there's several underlying themes for the story and the plot line. One of them is definitely friendship and loyalty. And the other is kind of like the Cinderella story, the classic storyline of hardship and neglected person, and then all of a sudden they move up, but they keep that sense of integrity and kindness to them, even though like in the Harry Potter story, he becomes famous, and then people don't like him because of that, or they are fanatics, or they follow him around with a camera or whatever, but he keeps his integrity in his character.
Yes, that's a very good point. The theme of integrity is big, and um, and also I think courage. You know, we haven't talked about Jordan Peterson in a while, but even Peterson has had long lectures about Harry Potter and the idea of confronting the dragon. He talks about this as well, but and other lectures. But this is Harry Potter. This is also Star Wars, and we could talk about the hero's journey. But
Yeah.
the fear everybody has about confronting something, and it could be anything. It's different for you, Sonia, than it is for me or Jake, and anybody watching. Is there is something out there that they know they have to face, and they've been dreading it, but once they face it, oh, it's not so bad. It's not as big as they thought it was. So there is an element of that, isn't there?
Can I
Definitely.
say? Can I mention something real quick, Sonia? In the chapter, going with what Ruben just shared, in chapter, it's towards the end of the book, but this is not going to spoil it. Dumbledore is talking to Harry, and Harry says this regarding Voldemort. He goes, "Harry, lay there for lost of words." Dumbledore hummed a little and smiled at the ceiling. He said, "Sir," said Harry, "I've been thinking, sir. Even if the stone gone, I mean, you know who." And then he says, "Call him Voldemort, Harry. Always use the proper name for things. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself." And I thought, whoa, that, Dumbledore, that is so true. He says, hey, and Harry did. He faced those fears, and now Dumbledore is saying, do it with words. Be an example. And I thought that was great. Anyway, yeah.
I was gonna say another thing having to do with courage and making decisions is there's um a storyline in the book series, and I don't want to be a spoiler, but um there was a prophecy about a child being born, and Harry Potter was only one of the several people it could have been. And so there's other characters in the story that could have made choices to get to the point that the points that Harry had to face, but because of the choices he made, it was him. And there's a few other characters that it could have been along the way. And so and anyways, it's just interesting how the author had thought all of that through, because you don't find stuff like that out until like books 5 or 6, and your mind is blown. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's been thinking of that the whole time. And just like, it's just genius.
Absolutely. You're reading these books, and you think, how does this woman, I mean, could be a man, she's a woman, but how does this person stay so imaginative and kind of delve into, I don't want to say into the mind of a child though, because these are themes that are useful for adults too. Adults, you're an adult, Sonia, will love these books, and maybe some adults just haven't picked them up. But we talk about, there's a quote, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." But children, I could see being excited about the troll who gets the wand stuck up his up its nose, and the monsters, the monsters in the book. But adults can feel the tug of that thing that they need to accomplish in life. That I don't know, just as recently as this last week, somebody told me, "I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start one of these days. I'm going to start this podcast on X." Actually, it was 2 weeks ago. I was hiking with a friend, and I told her, "Why don't you do that today? Well, I have things to do. I have, you know what I mean?" But it's about starting today. It's about confronting that, and I just think that an adult shouldn't look at this as a children's book, but I think a lot of people do. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's not a children's book. In the same way that the Chronicles of Narnia is not a children's book. I read that. I had me and my kids, we have book club in the summer, my younger ones. So we read Chronicles of Narnia last summer, and so anyways, it's on my mind, but they
I
love
was going to say, Sonia, that I was talking to a young reader, an author recently who writes for young readers, and she was saying, "Oh no, a good writer is, yeah, it's for young readers, but it's for the adults. The adults can get into it and enjoy it, right? It's for young readers, but it's really the adults are getting so much out of it."
Right. And it's the same way that the series draws you in, and the Chronicles of Narnia are not the same because they're different stories, but it's the same world and a few of the same elements. And anyways, yeah, anybody can enjoy a good book. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, I read aloud daily to my students who are currently, I teach third grade, picture books, but I read them like the narrative biography of Roger, the thesaurus guy, and people like that. Just all kinds of books, silly, informative, a good story, whatever it is. Anybody can enjoy good storytelling and good writing.
I think this book will be read 100 years from now, partly because sometimes we get caught up in the flavor of the month, these ideas that will only last. The culture lies to us. So, Sonia, we just reviewed Tuesdays with Maury with Kenny Completo. And one of the lasting truths that Maury said was that the culture lies to us, and we have to be aware of that. And I think that stories like Lord of the Rings, and you mentioned that one too, Sonia, fantastic. Hey, Jake, we haven't done Lord of the Rings. But I think why these books last is because they're not stuck in what culture is telling us right now, but what centuries of wisdom has reminded us and keeps reminding us. I sound highfalutin right now. There are a lot of just spells and cool things going on. The cloak of invisibility. Come on, you gotta love it.
Yeah.
And,
well, she had her own twist on everything, but some people have accused her of plagiarism or just copying. But those are the cultural tales that she grew up with. She's from England. So she grew up with C.S. Lewis and Tolkien as being like icons of authorship. So of course she knows those stories well, and those aren't the only ones, but those are just the famous ones. But she took those stories, and they didn't write the original tales either. This is part of their cultural lore.
Right. Yeah.
And she took those same elements and made her own story out of it.
Yes, and like you said, she made her own story out of it. You had to create a Harry Potter, going to Hogwarts school, going to 9 3/4 platform. She made it imaginative of her own, and everybody does it in their own. Not everybody, but a lot of people do it in their own way. I was thinking about Infinity War. I don't like the Marvel the Marvel movies that much, but I did like Infinity War because it took on the guy who snaps, Thanos.
Thanos.
It had a lot of those themes of myths. So they're even doing that. They're taking that cue as well. And it's okay to do it because the public needs to hear that. It needs to hear instead of keeping the ring, we're going to throw it. We're going to throw it away because it's going to destroy us. That greed, that envy is going to destroy us. That's what we need to hear. And that's why we still read Shakespeare. And we also haven't covered Shakespeare, but that's why we read Shakespeare today as well. So.
Hey, Ruben, you might ask? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sonia, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a teacher, you can take those current trends with movies and comics and all that, and you can point your students at the originals and say, well, if you like it, this is the original story, and you should read it in this version, or even just listen to it in audio or something. So that way they're learning the history and the background.
That's good. Hey, Sonia, as we have you here, can I ask you a question about the story that I'm sure it's been written about, but I don't know your opinion about it, and that it's regarding Dumbledore. I feel like he was always, throughout the book, I felt like he knew exactly what Harry was up to, and that he just let him do it. So, and of course, being aware what he and his friends were doing, but I felt like he didn't get him to a place where he was going to really hurt himself. Do you am I off there, or do you think he was, he wasn't there, or I felt like he was around quite a bit without being there? Does that make sense? Like coming kind of like omnipresent a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's part of the conflict for Harry. Like he resents him in some of the books because he feels like he's not Dumbledore wasn't helping him when he should have, and he knew what was happening, and he didn't do anything to help him, and so on. So we don't really know if Dumbledore knew everything,
Right.
and he didn't always step in to save the day or rescue Harry. He was just kind of letting Harry figure it out himself, which is a whole other topic that we can.
Which I think is great, though. Which I think is awesome that he did that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So.
By the way, did you say that you first encountered this book when you were working on your credential?
Yeah, I was sitting. I had graduated, and I had a dietetics certificate. I was a registered dietitian already, and I went back to school to get my teaching credential. So I was already like 23 or 24, I think. And then I was sitting in the back of a 5-6 combo as the student teacher. And I had this little nook next to the bookcases to observe at the beginning of my student teaching. And I'm just looking at the books, and I see one, and it was Harry Potter, and I just picked it up because it was reading time. Everybody's supposed to be reading. So I started reading it as an adult. I didn't even know about it.
Well, that's pretty soon. I'm not right after it got published, right? Not too far after.
I think 2 books had been out or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, it's never too late to read it, and I guess there are other things we mentioned on another discussion about her influence from the hero's journey, but a lot of screenwriters have been influenced by Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and they get too much in their head by reading the book from Joseph Campbell, and a lot of bad screenplays have been written based on that idea. They should just read this book or watch the movie, because you see it done well in real time. The call to adventure, the reluctant hero approaching the cave, everything that he mentions. I'm sure Rowling was inspired by Joseph Campbell, but she turned it into magic, right? I mean, the story was about magic, but just the book is. Any last words on the Sorcerer's Stone?
Always read the book first. Don't judge it by the movie. Even though the movie was done very well, the book is 10 times better, which is usually true. And I try and convince everybody to read the book, even if you saw the movie, because there's just so much more that you can get out of it. Like I mentioned earlier, as a teacher, so much, and just as a reader.
Yeah, and with me, Ruben, I think that my last comment would be a question to Sonia. Real quick question. There's rumor that there's going to be a TV series on this on Harry Potter. How do you feel about that? And that'll be the last thing I share.
Oh, I don't know. It'll probably be kind of cheesy.
Okay. We'll have to come back for that when it comes out.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good point. Well, thank you, Sonia, for joining us and having this discussion about maybe one of your favorite books. Got to be
one of my favorite topics in life, definitely.
Oh, wow.
Wait.
We have to have a Harry Potter party.
One of your favorite topics, not even one of your favorite books.
Yeah, reading specifically Harry Potter.
I like it. Okay. Thank you, Sonia, and thank you for joining us, everybody. Catch us next time, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.